Emma Harrison was 7 years old when her world crumbled. She watched through the courtroom's heavy wooden doors as her mother, Linda Harrison, was led away in handcuffs for a murder she didn't commit. The little girl clutched her worn teddy bear, unable to comprehend why everyone believed her gentle mother could kill anyone, especially not Detective Robert Kane, the kind police officer who used to visit their home for coffee and conversation. If you've ever watched an innocent person pay for someone else's crimes while the real killer walks free, you know the rage that burns in a child's heart. Subscribe to hear how sometimes justice takes decades to arrive, but when it does, it's absolute. What Emma didn't know that day was that the real killer sat 3 rows behind her in the courtroom, dabbing fake tears from her eyes. Patricia Morse, her mother's cousin, and the woman who would soon become Emma's guardian, had orchestrated the perfect crime. She had murdered her own husband, Detective Kane, when his investigation into mysterious deaths at Westside Medical Clinic threatened to expose the corruption she was protecting. Patricia worked as head nurse at Westside Medical Clinic, a position that gave her access to patient records, medication logs, and the darkest secrets of the facility. When elderly patients began dying under suspicious circumstances, Detective Kane noticed a pattern. The deaths weren't random medical emergencies. They were systematic, planned, and profitable. Someone was deliberately killing patients to claim their insurance payouts and inheritance kickbacks. Kane had been building his case methodically the way good detectives do. He discovered that certain doctors were selecting vulnerable patients with substantial life insurance policies, patients with no close family, to ask difficult questions. The medical staff would then alter treatment protocols, switch medications, or simply withhold critical care until the patient died. The clinic would collect insurance money, and the involved staff would receive substantial bonuses disguised as performance incentives. Detective Kane's investigation was getting too close to the truth. Patricia knew that if the scheme was exposed, not only would she lose her lucrative position, but she would face murder charges for her role in at least 12 patient deaths. The clinic generated millions in fraudulent insurance claims, and Patricia received a cut of every successful claim. On the night Kane died, he had called Patricia to inform her that he would be making arrests the following morning. He trusted her. After all, she was family to his girlfriend's cousin. He thought she was an innocent employee who might be willing to testify against the corrupt doctors. Instead, Patricia invited him over for dinner, claiming she had evidence that would help his case. She served him wine laced with digitalis, a heart medication that would cause cardiac arrest in high doses. When Kane began experiencing chest pains, Patricia called 911, playing the role of the panicked girlfriend trying to save her beloved's life. But Kane was stronger than she anticipated. As the digitalis coursed through his system, he realized what was happening. In his final moments of consciousness, he reached for his service weapon. Patricia, seeing her plan unraveling, grabbed the gun during their struggle. The weapon discharged, striking Kane in the chest. Now she had a real problem. A dead detective in her kitchen, with digitalis in his system and gunshot residue on her hands. But Patricia was clever, calculating, and utterly without conscience. She called her cousin Linda Harrison. "Linda, please come over immediately," Patricia sobbed into the phone. "Something terrible has happened to Robert. I need your help." Linda Harrison was a simple woman who cleaned houses for a living. She loved her daughter Emma more than life itself and trusted her family completely. When she arrived at Patricia's house and found Detective Kane dead on the kitchen floor, Patricia was ready with her story. "He was drinking heavily," Patricia lied, her eyes red from self-induced tears. "He became violent, started hitting me. The gun went off during our struggle. Linda, I was defending myself, but who's going to believe me? I'm just a nurse. He was a respected detective." Linda Harrison, whose heart was too pure to imagine the depths of her cousin's deception, immediately offered to help dispose of the body, to lie to police, to do whatever was necessary to protect Patricia from an abusive man's final act of violence. But Patricia had a different plan. "No, Linda, I have a better idea. You take the gun. You say you came here and found him attacking me. You shot him to save my life. You'll claim self-defense, protection of another person. With your clean record, you'll get minimal time, maybe just a few years. I'll take care of Emma while you're gone, and when you get out, we'll be a family again." Linda Harrison, in her naive desire to help, agreed. She took the gun, called 911, and confessed to shooting Detective Kane in defense of her cousin Patricia. The trial was swift. Patricia testified that Linda had arrived during a domestic dispute and shot Kane when he threatened both women. The prosecution argued that Linda could have called police instead of taking the law into her own hands. The defense was underfunded and overworked. Linda Harrison was sentenced to 15 years for voluntary manslaughter. Emma went to live with Patricia Morse, the woman who had destroyed her life while pretending to be her savior. Life with Patricia was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. She treated Emma well enough to avoid suspicion from social services, but every kindness came with a reminder of debt. "I'm taking care of you because your mother killed someone," Patricia would say during Emma's teenage years. "The least you can do is show some gratitude." Patricia used Emma as unpaid household help while building her new life. With Detective Kane's investigation buried along with him, Westside Medical Clinic continued its insurance fraud scheme. Patricia married Dr. James Westbrook, one of the clinic's owners and primary architects of the patient-killing operation. Dr. Westbrook was a charming sociopath who had perfected the art of medical murder. He specialized in elderly patients with substantial assets and no close family. His method was elegant in its simplicity. He would gradually increase dosages of heart medication until the patient experienced natural cardiac failure. The deaths appeared to be complications from existing conditions, and the clinic's mortality rate, while high, wasn't unusual enough to trigger investigation. Patricia's marriage to Dr. Westbrook elevated her from accomplice to partner. Together, they expanded the operation, recruiting other medical professionals and targeting wealthier patients. By the time Emma turned 18, the clinic had murdered over 40 patients and stolen more than $8 million in insurance payouts and inheritance fraud. Emma aged out of Patricia's custody and moved into a small apartment near the community college where she studied criminal justice. She told everyone she wanted to understand why her mother had made such a terrible choice, but Emma's real motivation was darker and more patient. During her years in Patricia's house, Emma had been watching, listening, and learning. She noticed how Patricia received mysterious cash payments. She observed late-night phone calls with Dr. Westbrook before they were married. She saw medical files Patricia brought home and burned in the backyard. Most importantly, she overheard conversations about problem patients and insurance timing. When Emma was 16, she had snuck into Patricia's home office and photographed financial documents that showed payments from Westside Medical Clinic far exceeding a nurse's salary. She had recorded conversations between Patricia and Dr. Westbrook using a small device hidden in the living room. She had copies of patient files Patricia had foolishly kept as insurance against her co-conspirators. Emma Harrison spent her college years studying not just criminal justice, but forensic accounting, medical fraud investigation, and digital evidence preservation. She learned about insurance fraud patterns, medical malpractice law, and cold case investigation techniques. But Emma's most valuable education came from her mother's letters. Linda Harrison had written to her daughter faithfully from prison, letters that Patricia intercepted and hid. Emma discovered them during her senior year of high school while helping Patricia clean out a storage closet. There were 43 letters spanning 11 years, chronicling Linda's growing awareness that she had been manipulated. The final letter, written just weeks before Linda's death, was a confession. "My dearest Emma," Linda had written in her careful handwriting, "I know now that Patricia lied to me. I've had years to think about that night, and I've spoken with other inmates who used to work in medical fields. The story Patricia told me about Robert becoming violent doesn't make sense. Robert was investigating medical fraud at Patricia's clinic. I think she killed him to protect herself and let me take the blame. I'm going to request a meeting with the warden tomorrow to tell them the truth. If something happens to me before I can clear my name, please know that I love you and I never killed anyone. Patricia Morse is the real killer." Linda Harrison died in her cell that night. The official cause was suicide by hanging, but Emma knew better. Patricia had reached into the prison system and silenced the only witness to her crimes. Emma Harrison was 21 years old when she began her war against Patricia Morse Westbrook. Her strategy was methodical, patient, and absolutely ruthless. Emma understood that exposing Patricia's crimes wouldn't be enough. She needed to destroy every aspect of the life Patricia had built on blood money. Emma's first target was Dr. James Westbrook. She applied for a job as a medical billing specialist at Westside Medical Clinic, using a false name and fabricated references. Her criminal justice education had taught her about document forgery, and she created a perfect false identity as Sarah Mitchell, a recent graduate with impeccable credentials. Working inside the clinic, Emma gained access to patient records, insurance claims, and financial documents. She documented everything: the systematic targeting of vulnerable patients, the coordinated medication adjustments that caused natural deaths, the falsified medical reports that justified insurance payouts. But Emma's real goal was Dr. Westbrook's personal life. She discovered that despite his wealth, Dr. Westbrook had a weakness for gambling. He regularly visited underground poker games and illegal sports betting operations. Emma began attending these same gambling venues, carefully establishing herself as a mysterious woman with access to inside information about medical investments and pharmaceutical stocks. Dr. Westbrook was intrigued by this beautiful, intelligent woman who seemed to predict market movements with uncanny accuracy. Emma fed him carefully researched stock tips that earned him substantial profits, building his trust and dependency on her insider knowledge. Over 18 months, Emma manipulated Dr. Westbrook into increasingly risky investments. She convinced him to mortgage the clinic, liquidate his personal assets, and invest everything in a pharmaceutical startup that she claimed was developing revolutionary heart medication. The pharmaceutical company was real, but Emma had spent months researching companies doomed to fail. She knew their clinical trials were failing, their FDA approval was being withdrawn, and their stock would collapse within weeks. When the company's stock price plummeted, Dr. Westbrook lost everything. The clinic was foreclosed upon, his personal assets were seized, and his medical license was suspended, pending investigation into his financial irregularities. But Emma wasn't finished with him. She anonymously submitted her documented evidence of the clinic's insurance fraud to the FBI, the State Medical Board, and the IRS. Dr. Westbrook was arrested on 47 counts of murder, insurance fraud, and medical malpractice. During his perp walk, Emma stood in the crowd of reporters and made eye contact with him. She saw the moment of recognition in his eyes, the realization that Sarah Mitchell had orchestrated his destruction. She smiled and whispered, "For my mother." Dr. Westbrook died by suicide in his jail cell before trial, leaving a confession that implicated Patricia as the scheme's mastermind. Patricia Morse Westbrook's world collapsed overnight. Her husband's death meant his confession became public record. The FBI seized all assets connected to the clinic fraud, leaving her financially ruined. The clinic's closure triggered a massive investigation that uncovered decades of patient murders. But Emma wasn't satisfied with Patricia losing her money and facing criminal charges. She wanted psychological destruction, the same complete devastation Patricia had inflicted on Linda Harrison. Emma used her access to Patricia's personal information to systematically destroy her remaining relationships. She anonymously sent evidence of Patricia's crimes to every friend, family member, and professional contact. She leaked details about Patricia's manipulation of Linda Harrison to local media, turning public opinion violently against her. Most devastatingly, Emma arranged for Patricia to learn the truth about her mother's death. Using prison contacts she had cultivated during her research, Emma ensured that details about Linda Harrison's suicide reached inmates who had been in the same facility. These women, hardened criminals with their own codes of justice, did not react kindly to learning that Patricia had arranged the murder of an innocent woman. Patricia received dozens of threatening letters from former inmates, graphic descriptions of what would happen to her when she entered the prison system, promises that Linda Harrison's death would be avenged. The psychological pressure broke Patricia's mind. She began experiencing paranoid delusions, convinced that Linda Harrison's ghost was haunting her. She would wake up screaming about dead patients standing at the foot of her bed. She started confessing to murders on social media, rambling about conspiracy theories and divine punishment. Patricia's mental breakdown was so complete that her own defense attorney requested a competency hearing. She was declared unfit to stand trial and committed to a state psychiatric facility. Emma visited Patricia exactly once, 3 years after her commitment. Patricia sat in the facility's visiting room, heavily medicated and barely coherent. Her hair had turned completely white, her hands shook constantly, and she spoke in whispered fragments about ghosts and judgment. "Do you know who I am?" Emma asked quietly. Patricia stared at her with vacant eyes for several long moments. Then recognition flickered, not of Emma, but of Linda Harrison's features in her daughter's face. "Linda," Patricia whispered, terror creeping into her voice. "Linda, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to die. I just needed you to take the blame for a little while. You were supposed to come home." "I'm not Linda," Emma said calmly. "I'm Emma Harrison, Linda's daughter, the little girl you destroyed when you murdered Detective Kane and framed my mother." Patricia's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Emma? Little Emma? But you were just a child." "I grew up," Emma replied. "I learned everything. I know you killed Detective Kane because he discovered your insurance fraud. I know you manipulated my mother into taking the blame. I know you had her murdered in prison when she threatened to tell the truth." Patricia began shaking violently. No, that's not... Linda killed herself. She couldn't live with what she did. My mother wrote me letters," Emma continued. 43 letters you hid from me. In the last one, she said she was going to tell the warden the truth about you. She died that same night, quite a coincidence. "You can't prove anything," Patricia whispered, but her voice held no conviction. "I don't need to prove anything anymore," Emma said. "You're already finished. You lost your husband, your money, your freedom, and your sanity. You'll spend the rest of your life in this facility, knowing that Linda Harrison's daughter destroyed everything you built on her grave." Emma stood to leave, then paused. "My mother was innocent. She died believing she had saved you from an abusive man. She never knew you were the real killer. She died thinking she was protecting family." Patricia began sobbing, reaching out toward Emma with trembling hands. "Please, Emma, I can make this right. I have money hidden. You have nothing," Emma said. "The FBI seized every asset connected to your crimes. Dr. Westbrook's confession detailed your entire operation. 47 families have filed wrongful death lawsuits against your estate. You'll never see a penny of the money you stole." Emma walked toward the door, then turned back one final time. "Oh, and Patricia, I wanted you to know, I'm the one who fed your husband the bad investment tips. I'm the one who sent his gambling debts to dangerous people. I'm the one who made sure he lost everything before he died. Every single piece of your destruction. That was me." Patricia's scream echoed through the psychiatric facility as Emma Harrison walked away, finally free from the burden of her mother's false conviction. Emma changed her name back to Emma Harrison and moved across the country. She used her criminal justice degree to work with organizations that help wrongfully convicted prisoners. She never married, never had children, and never spoke publicly about her role in Patricia Morse Westbrook's downfall. 20 years after watching her innocent mother led away in handcuffs, Emma had achieved perfect justice. The real killer was imprisoned, insane and impoverished. The corrupt clinic was shut down. The victims' families had legal closure and financial compensation. But Emma's greatest victory was smaller, more personal. She kept one of her mother's hidden letters in her wallet, the one where Linda had written, "Emma, if something happens to me, please know that I love you and I never killed anyone." Finally, after 2 decades, Emma Harrison could answer her mother's letter. "I know, Mom, I always knew, and I made sure everyone else knows too. Some acts of justice require patience, measured not in months or years, but in decades. Some wrongs can only be righted by those willing to sacrifice their own peace for the truth. And sometimes, the daughter of an innocent woman can become the instrument of perfect vengeance, delivered with the cold precision of someone who learned early that the world isn't fair, but it can be balanced."